For 19 years, the world believed the wealthy Hayes family had suffered a tragic loss, burying their only daughter after a house fire. They were wrong. Beneath the polished hardwood of their multi-million-dollar estate lived a secret, a girl locked in the dark, waiting for a monster to save her from her own father. The sprawling, ivy-choked estate in Oakbrook, Illinois was a monument to old money and carefully curated lies. To the public, William Hayes was a pillar of the community, a grieving widower, a brilliant investment banker, a prolific philanthropist who donated millions to pediatric burn units. To the city's elite, he was a tragic figure who'd lost his wife and 6-year-old daughter in a devastating house fire nearly 2 decades ago. But the truth was buried beneath their feet, sealed behind a heavy, steel-reinforced door in the estate's wine cellar. Melline Hayes was 25 years old, and officially, she did not exist. She sat on a threadbare mattress in the corner of her underground prison, the faint hum of the estate's HVAC system her only constant companion. The basement stretched the full length of the mansion, cold and dim, lit only by a single fluorescent bulb and the pale glow of a salvaged laptop. Melline pulled a wool blanket over her shoulders, her fingers flying across a cracked keyboard. The fire that took her mother 19 years ago had left Melline with a jagged, starburst scar wrapping her collarbone and creeping up her neck. To William, a man obsessed with appearances and social standing, his daughter had become a defect. A monster. But the scar wasn't the real reason he'd declared her dead and locked her away in the dark. The real reason was that even at 6 years old, Melline had an eidetic memory and a terrifyingly sharp mind. She had seen him start that fire. She knew too much. So he buried her alive. Over the years, he gave her the bare minimum: canned food, bottled water, thrift store books to keep her quiet. He thought she was simply surviving. A pathetic secret he could ignore. He had no idea what she'd actually become. Using spare electronics parts her father carelessly tossed down the laundry chute, Melline had built herself a makeshift server. She'd cracked the estate's encrypted Wi-Fi at 12. By 15, she'd broken into the firewall of her father's private financial firm. By 20, she'd mapped out the entirety of his hidden ledgers. Melline knew exactly how William Hayes funded his exorbitant lifestyle. He wasn't just an investment banker. He was the primary money launderer for the Chicago outfit, specifically, the Moretti crime syndicate. Tonight, the floorboards above her head were vibrating. Melline glanced up, her sharp blue eyes narrowing. She could hear the scrape of expensive dining chairs, the clink of crystal, the heavy footfalls of men carrying weapons under tailored Italian suits. William was hosting a dinner party, but not for his country club friends. Melline switched tabs on her computer, pulling up the estate's security feeds, which she'd tapped into months earlier. The dining room was tense. At the head of the table sat her father, pale and slick with nervous sweat. Across from him sat Roman Moretti. Roman had taken over the syndicate 6 months ago, after his uncle's indictment. He was 32, lethally calm, and moved with the quiet, predatory grace of a man who never needed to raise his voice to order an execution. In a charcoal bespoke suit, his dark eyes stayed fixed on William with a chilling emptiness. Melline typed a quick command, pulling up a secure file. For 3 years, she'd watched her father systematically skim millions off the Moretti accounts, filtering the stolen funds through a maze of shell companies in the Caymans and Cyprus. William thought he was untouchable, that his algorithmic trading bots hid his tracks perfectly. But Melline had unraveled all of it. To her, the numbers were beautiful. A song of betrayal, greed, and coming ruin. She documented every stolen cent. On screen, Roman leaned forward, forearms on the mahogany table. The feed had no audio, but Melline didn't need it. She read lips, a skill she'd taught herself years ago, listening to her father mutter through the basement air vents. The accounts are light, William, Roman was saying. 15 million over the last 2 quarters. You wouldn't happen to know anything about a ghost corporation in Nassau, would you? William's lips trembled. I assure you, Roman, market fluctuations. Roman raised a single hand, silencing him. He wasn't buying it. A dark, vindictive thrill shot down Melline's spine. The monster upstairs was finally facing a bigger, far more dangerous predator. Then something unexpected happened. Roman stood, adjusted his cuffs, waved his two guards back, said a few words to William about needing the restroom, and left the dining room. Meline's eyes darted across the camera grid. Roman wasn't heading for the guest powder room. He was walking down the dim corridor toward the west wing, toward the pantry. Toward the wine cellar. Meline's heart slammed against her ribs. She slammed the laptop shut, plunging her corner of the basement into darkness. She grabbed the heavy iron fireplace poker she kept under her mattress, her only defense in a world entirely outside her control, and backed into the darkest corner of the room, breath catching as she heard heavy footsteps descending the cellar stairs. Roman Moretti didn't believe in ghosts, but William Hayes's house felt like a tomb. He'd known for months the banker was stealing from him, an insult, really. William's laundering network was sophisticated, but Roman had inherited a fractured empire that demanded he trust no one and verify everything. He'd come tonight to look William in the eye, watch him sweat, and confirm his guilt before burning the man's house to the ground. Wandering the sterile hallways, Roman felt a nagging unease. The house was too quiet, too pristine, no warmth, just the faint smell of bleach and old dust. He opened the pantry door, expecting to find a hidden office behind a false wall, based on his intel. Instead, he found a heavy, industrial-grade steel door built seamlessly into the masonry. Roman frowned. It didn't belong there. A biometric lock. A heavy deadbolt. Fortifications far beyond anything a wine collection would need. Why would a respectable banker need a vault door in his pantry? His instincts flared. If William was hiding the stolen $15 million in cash or bearer bonds, it would be down there. Roman pulled a titanium lock-picking tool from his jacket, shorted out the biometric panel, and manually worked the deadbolt until it gave way with a heavy clack. He pulled the door open. A rush of stale, cold air hit him, carrying a faint scent of ozone and old paper. He drew his suppressed pistol, thumbed off the safety, and descended into the dark. At the bottom, he found a basement that looked like a cross between a hoarder's den and a surveillance bunker, stacks of books forming makeshift walls, tangled wires snaking across the concrete like black veins, all leading to a jury-rigged server rack blinking with LEDs. Then he saw her. Standing in the shadows, thin frame rigid, clutching a rusted iron poker like she meant to kill him. Roman raised his weapon instantly, aiming at her chest. "Drop it," he ordered, his voice a low, lethal rasp. The girl didn't move. She stepped slightly into the light, and Roman's breath caught, his hardened composure cracking for just a moment. She was devastatingly beautiful and hauntingly fragile at once, porcelain skin that had never seen the sun, and eyes of a vivid, startling blue, burning with fierce, unapologetic defiance. A jagged scar ran down the left side of her neck, disappearing beneath the collar of an oversized, faded sweater. "I said drop it," Roman repeated, stepping closer, gun steady. "If you shoot me," she said, her voice raspy from disuse but perfectly calm, "you'll never find your $15 million. Roman stopped. He lowered the barrel a fraction. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm the ghost that haunts this house." Meline lowered the poker, it clattered against the concrete. "My name is Meline Hayes. William is my father." Roman's brow furrowed. "William Hayes lost his daughter in a fire 19 years ago." "William Hayes started that fire," Meline corrected, venom in her voice. She gestured to the scar on her neck. "He just didn't finish the job. So he locked me down here instead. The world didn't want to look at a monster." Roman absorbed it with the cold, calculating speed that had kept him alive in the underworld. He looked around the room properly this time. Behind her, lit by a cheap desk lamp, were whiteboards covered in complex financial algorithms, offshore routing numbers, shell company registries. He walked past her, keeping her in his peripheral vision, and studied the boards. His eyes widened. It was a perfect, intricate map of his own syndicate's finances, every account, every wire transfer overlaid with the parasitic trail of William's theft. "You did this?" Roman asked, barely above a whisper. "I had 19 years of free time," Meline said, arms crossed, "and a stolen Wi-Fi connection. William thinks he's a genius. He uses a dynamic encryption algorithm to shuffle your money into a holding account in Nassau. But he's arrogant, he reuses his seed phrases. I broke his cipher 3 months ago. Roman turned to face her, holstering his weapon. He was a man who trafficked in violence, extortion, and fear. He'd seen the darkest corners of human nature. But looking at this girl, brilliant, broken, buried alive, and answering it by quietly dismantling her captor's empire from the shadows, he felt something entirely unfamiliar. Reverence. Everyone else looked at William Hayes and saw a saint, Roman murmured, stepping into her space. He towered over her, but Meline didn't flinch. She tilted her chin up, meeting his gaze with equal ferocity. They saw a tragedy. I saw a thief. I never saw this. He's planning to flee, Meline said flatly. Tomorrow morning, he has a chartered flight out of Midway to Zurich. If you kill him upstairs right now, his dead man's switch activates, and the 15 million locks permanently into a decentralized crypto wallet. You lose the money forever. Roman's eyes locked onto hers, dark and absolute. And what do you want, Meline Hayes? I want out, she breathed, her composure finally showing a hairline crack of desperation. Out of this basement. I want his life burned to ashes. I'll give you the decryption keys. Every cent he stole from you, plus the 10 million he's hidden for himself. But you take me with you. Roman stared at her. In his world, women were wives, mistresses, or collateral damage, never strategic partners. But Meline wasn't just a woman. She was a weapon forged in the dark, sharper than anything in his arsenal. Standing there under the sickly fluorescent light, Roman realized he didn't just want her mind. He wanted to watch her tear her father's empire apart. He reached out, brushing a lock of dark hair from her scarred neck. She stiffened but didn't pull away. You're not a monster, Piccolina, Roman said softly, his voice a dark, velvet promise. You're a goddamn masterpiece. He turned toward the stairs, then stopped and looked back over his shoulder. Grab your laptop, Meline. A cruel, beautiful smile crossed his lips. We're crashing a dinner party. The heavy steel door clicked shut behind them, sealing away the damp darkness that had been Meline's entire universe for 19 agonizing years. Climbing the stairs behind Roman, her bare feet felt the shock of cold stone giving way to plush Persian runners. The air smelled of roasted garlic, expensive truffles, and her father's cologne. Her stomach churned. She clutched her battered laptop to her chest like a shield. Roman moved with terrifying purpose, navigating the narrow servant corridors that bypassed the main foyer, never once looking back to check if she was following. He knew she was. The pull of vengeance was too strong to resist. In the grand dining room, the tension was suffocating. William sat at the head of the table, dabbing his forehead with a linen napkin. His guests, 2 of Roman's capos and a corrupt state senator on his payroll, sat in stony, awkward silence beneath a chandelier's unforgiving light. Roman is taking an awfully long time, William muttered, forcing a strained laugh. Perhaps I should have staff check on him. That won't be necessary, William. A deep voice boomed from the archway. Every head snapped toward it. Roman stood there, posture relaxed, adjusting his cuffs. But it wasn't Roman who drained the blood from William's face. It was the small, fragile figure stepping out of the shadows behind him. Meline stood in the harsh chandelier light, her oversized, moth-eaten sweater swallowing her thin frame, her pale skin in violent contrast with the jagged scar snaking up her neck. She squinted against the brightness, but her eyes locked onto the man at the head of the table. William's wineglass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the hardwood, a pool of Bordeaux spreading like fresh blood. Good evening, Father, Meline said, her raspy whisper slicing through the dead silence. William shot to his feet so fast his chair crashed backward. He raised his hands like he was warding off a ghost. No, it's impossible. You're dead. You died in the fire. You certainly tried your best, Meline replied coldly, stepping fully into the room. She walked to the table, ignoring the stunned mobsters and the terrified senator, and set her laptop down beside an untouched platter of beef Wellington. But fire is unpredictable, just like the blockchain. Speaking of which, we need to talk about your accounts at Lombard Odier. The name of the exclusive Swiss private bank made William choke on his own breath. It was supposed to be his ultimate, untraceable sanctuary. "Who is this?" one of Roman's capos demanded, his hand dropping toward a concealed weapon. "Stand down, Carlo," Roman ordered, his voice carrying absolute authority. He stepped forward, positioning himself just behind Meline, an impenetrable wall between her and the room. "Allow me to introduce our host's best-kept secret. His daughter, Meline. Turns out William isn't just a grieving widower. He's a monster who locks little girls in basements. And more importantly to us, he's a thief." William's panic curdled into cornered desperation, his eyes darting toward the staircase. "Roman, listen to me. This girl is insane. She's an imposter. My daughter is dead." Meline didn't even look at him. She flipped open her laptop, the glow-washing pale blue across her scarred face, fingers flying across the keys. "Account number ending in 4482, she recited mechanically. Currently holding $15,420,000. Stolen from the Moretti syndicate over the last 18 months. Funneled through a ghost corporation in the Cayman Islands, washed through a real estate trust in Miami, and settled in Lombard Odier." She hit enter. The flat screen above the fireplace, the one William usually used for digital art, flickered black, then mirrored Meline's screen for the entire room to see. Bank statements. Routing numbers. Forged signatures. Undeniable proof. William's carefully built persona shattered entirely, his face twisting into raw hatred. He lunged across the table, hands reaching for her throat. He didn't make it halfway. Roman moved with blinding speed, grabbed William by the lapels, hauled him clean off his feet, and slammed him down onto the center of the table. Fine china shattered. Crystal exploded. Silver candelabras crashed to the floor, snuffing the candles. Roman drew his weapon and pressed the suppressor to the center of William's forehead. "Give me one good reason," Roman whispered, eyes devoid of mercy, "why I shouldn't blow your brains all over this beautiful dining room right now." William sobbed, hands hovering helplessly, too terrified to touch the gun between his eyes. "Roman, please, I can explain. The market was down. I was going to pay you back. I swear on my life." "Your life has zero value to me right now," Roman said, his voice a low, lethal hum. He didn't look away from William, but spoke to Meline. "Your daughter's mine, though that's a highly appreciating asset. Do it, Piccolina. Drain him dry." Meline didn't hesitate. She looked at the man who'd stolen her childhood, condemned her to a concrete box, looked at her scars, and called her a monster. She felt no pity. Only the cold, precise calculation of a surgical strike. "You have a dead man's switch," she said, eyes locked on her father's sweating face. "If you die, the Lombard Odier account locks and the crypto wallet burns. But you used biometric two-factor authentication tied to your personal server upstairs. A server I bypassed 3 weeks ago." William's eyes went wide with horror. "No, you couldn't have. I had 19 years, father. I had nothing but time." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, lines of code cascading down the mirrored screen. She forced an override on the Swiss banking protocols, transferring 15.4 million back to the primary Moretti holding accounts. The screen blinked. Transfer complete. Roman smiled, dark, terrifying. "I'm not done," Meline said. William thrashed weakly under Roman's grip. "Meline, please, stop. I'm your father." "My father died in that fire, with my mother," she replied, voice dropping to a freezing whisper. She typed another sequence. "Now assessing your personal emergency fund. 10 million, washed through a shell company in Geneva. Transferring to an encrypted, decentralized wallet. Where are you sending my money?" William shrieked, tears streaming down his flushed face. Meline hit the final key and snapped the laptop shut. To me. Consider it back child support. The room fell utterly silent, save for William's ragged breathing. Even Roman's hardened crew exchanged stunned, impressed glances. This fragile, scarred girl, who had just crawled out of a basement, had dismantled a multi-million-dollar financial empire in under 5 minutes. Lethal. Brilliant. Fearless. Roman slowly holstered his weapon and stepped back, letting William scramble weakly upright among the ruined dinner spread. What are you going to do with me?" William stammered, clutching his chest. Roman looked at him with pure disgust. "I'm not going to kill you, William. That would be too easy. You're a disgraced, penniless man who owes a lot of favors to very bad people. I'm going to leave you right here. The police will get an anonymous tip about your tax evasion by morning. Let's see how long the great philanthropist survives in a federal penitentiary." He turned his back on the ruined banker and walked to Meline, noting the slight tremor in her hands now that the adrenaline was fading. She was exhausted, overwhelmed by the sheer sensory flood of the world above ground. But she stood tall. "Are you ready to leave this tomb?" Roman asked, his tone entirely different now, protective, possessive. Meline looked around the opulent dining room, then at the shattered, weeping man sprawled across the table. She felt a crushing weight lift from her chest. The invisible girl was dead. "Take me away from here," she whispered. Roman placed a heavy, protective hand on the small of her back, the first time in 19 years she'd been touched with anything resembling care. Its warmth radiated through her thin sweater, grounding her, anchoring her to this new reality. They walked out of the dining room together, leaving William Hayes to his self-inflicted ruin. As they stepped through the estate's heavy oak doors, the cool night air hit Meline's face. She closed her eyes, breathing in damp earth, pine trees, freedom. A fleet of black SUVs idled in the circular driveway. Roman led her to the lead vehicle and opened the armored door himself. "Where are we going?" she asked, clutching her laptop tightly. "Anywhere you want, Piccolina," Roman said, a genuine, dark smile finally breaking across his face. "You just bought your way into the syndicate for $10 million. I think it's time you meet the rest of the family." Meline stepped into the SUV, the heavy door slamming shut behind her, sealing her new fate. She had spent her entire life locked in the dark, waiting for a monster to save her. She had finally found one, and he was perfect. Did you expect that twist? Meline's journey from forgotten victim to the mastermind who dismantled her father's criminal empire, right in front of a mafia boss, is the ultimate story of vengeance. If you were captivated by her brilliant revenge and her dark, thrilling alliance with Roman, don't keep it to yourself, hit that like button, share this video with fellow mafia romance drama lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more intense, real-life inspired stories.